Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order at 1 o'clock. Proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. Could we have the roll call, please?
Thank you. Mayor Clarkson, are you present?
I am.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
Present.
Councillor Armstrong?
I'm present.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Lambshead?
Present.
For staff, we have Dylan Kosh, Director of Recreation and Facilities. He will be here. Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Barb Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Ann Ruth, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Sarah Delamarter, Junior Planner.
Present.
Chelsea Carpenter, Waste Public Works Coordinator.
Present.
Chastity Robertson, Deputy Treasurer.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services Clerk, is present.
Thank you. So we're going to do the land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge the Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Michi-Saugee Territory and in the traditional territory of the Michi-Saugee and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nation, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nations. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibilities as members of council.
I just make one statement to Mayor Clarkson. Lou Simmons, a longtime resident of Galway. He has a computer shop. He had quite a varied life. He graduated from a Black university on environmental studies. He taught at Sir Sedford Fleming for, I'd say, 10 or 15 years, and he had a computer shop in Kinmount. And he had cancer for the last 15 years, and finally he died. He was 94 years old.
Wow. Okay, we will keep him in our moment of reflection. Thank you.
As a matter of fact, our historical society did a small write-up in their leaflet about his life.
Well, people can, thank you for drawing that to their attention, and they can look that up if they care to look into it further. At this time, I'm going to remind council members of their obligation to declare any pecuniary interest they may have now or at any time in the future. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Deputy Mayor Windover and Councillor Franzen, all in favor? That motion is carried. If I misplace you guys, it's because you're all in different places again. Take me a little while to find you. We need to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of June the 21st and the statutory public meeting also of June the 21st. Terry. And Carol.
Carol.
And Carol. All in favor? The motion is carried. Committee and boards, Economic Development Advisory Committee, motion to receive these minutes. Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Motion is carried. Liaison reports from council boards. Have anyone got a report for any of these? EDAC, PRCAC, and PSB or Library Board? Anybody want to speak to any of these? And we don't have a statutory public meeting today. Business arising from a statutory public meeting, obviously none. We will now have a presentation from Chris Cowanlott and Community Development Program Manager for the City of Peterborough, and Alana Solomon, CEO Township of North Kawartha, and Christy Nash, a rising collective regarding the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Please unmute your audio and share your camera and make your presentation. You will have 20 minutes and we'll ask council that they save questions till the end of the presentation, please.
Thank you, Mayor Clarkson and members of council. Appreciate being here today. I believe Christy is going to, it's shared already. That's perfect. Thank you. This presentation, as Mayor Clarkson identified, is a group effort between Lana Solomon, CAO of Township North Kawartha. She also co-chaired the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Advisory Committee. And as you mentioned, Christy Nash, the co-founder of Arising Collective, the consulting firm that is working on this plan. Chris Galeazza of the OPP wanted to be here today, but he's going to connect with the township at a future time in relation to this plan. He was also on the advisory committee. We are pleased to be here today to present the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan for your consideration. The path for getting this point has been a bit winding and somewhat bumpy at times, but we firmly believe in the process we undertook and the plan that you have in front of you. Before we get to the presentation, it's important that I recognize the invaluable contributions of a number of groups in the making of this plan, particularly the advisory committee, 33 members that represented leaders from local organizations and government. They participated on this committee for over a year, and particularly through 2021 in the pandemic, which created a lot of additional challenges. And this particular committee wasn't one that they, added stress on their agendas. But their perseverance towards contributing is greatly appreciated. There are almost 100 agency representatives that shared their knowledge and experience in the development of this plan in the background. Client advisory committees, folks who shared their knowledge, but more importantly, their personal experiences dealing with many of the issues in this plan. Police services boards in the city and the county, township councils, rural residents who participated in the outreach efforts that we put in place. And those who participated and completed the online survey through Connect Peterborough all helped contribute to the making of this plan. I think I also want to acknowledge our consultants, Arising Collective. Their professionalism and flexibility and adaptability has played a key role in getting us to this point. So without any further delay, if we go to the next slide, please. The agenda for our presentation is to talk about certainly obviously the plan, but outline the provincial framework, look at the priority areas that have been identified, the process and the engagement that we went through, planning around the belonging and safety themes that are throughout the plan at a glance, and then our next steps. I'll turn it over to Alana now.
Thank you, Chris. In 2019, the Safer Ontario Act mandated that every municipal council prepare and adopt a community safety and wellbeing plan. In Peterborough, the city and the county, along with the 5 townships of Douro-Dummer, Havelock, Belmont, Methuen, North Kawartha, Selwyn, and Trent Lakes, decided to work collaboratively to develop a joint plan. The purpose of the plan is to identify, align, and focus collaborative actions to build a community in which everyone is safe, included, and part of a community. The goal of the plan, as outlined in the provincial framework, is to address community priority risks through proactive, integrated strategies that ensure more vulnerable populations receive the right help from the right providers. Essentially, this will build capacity in the community to alleviate the burden on emergency services. The desired change as a result of the plan is that the community will work together in new ways to address safety and well-being issues through programs and services that are available to all who work, live, and play in the city and county of Peterborough. No one agency can do this on their own. No one individual can single-handedly address the systems level change required for true belonging to take hold. It will take a broad ecosystem that includes all levels of government, community organizations, community volunteers, and kind neighbors working together to achieve the goals in this plan. It's important to note that through the collaborative approach of developing the plan, there has been a sense of re-energized willingness to have hard conversations, to align priorities and work together towards solutions. The process has fostered dialogue about the interconnectedness of issues. and has strengthened relationships, all of which are positive secondary outcomes of the process of creating this plan. This has resulted in a deeper appreciation for the continuing work and a stronger understanding of what will be needed to move the needle forward towards positive change. Next slide. These plans use a multi-sectoral approach that recognize that police, municipalities, and community organizations cannot address these complex social issues at play in community safety and well-being on their own. However, in taking a lead in developing the plan, municipalities help define and address priority risks through proactive integrated strategies that ensure these more vulnerable populations receive the right help, the right provider. In particular, the framework indicates that the focus of the plan should be on upstream approaches as much as possible, including enhancing social development, prevention, and risk intervention strategies. It also will suggest that the success factors for developing and implementing the plan include building on existing strengths and taking an evidence-based approach to identifying the risks and priorities. Next, turn it over to Christy.
Much, Elena. So ideally, the plan will serve as a community plan, inspiring collective action toward common priorities. The plan itself is a guide for partners, including municipalities, police, and social service organizations, to embed priorities into their own planning and work collaboratively across sectors. So as you will have seen, the plan has been organized into 4 main sections. The first is our approach, which outlines the guiding principles and frameworks that inform the underlying ethos of the plan, as well as the process, timeline, who is engaged in the planning process, and the 5 priority areas addressed in the plan. The second section is around the current context, which describes what is currently happening in our community related to the priority areas. The third section is the plan itself, which outlines each priority area, why it is important to address, and current challenges related to it. It also includes promising practices and collaborations and actions that are already taking place. For each priority area, a common outcome is stated, the goals are described, and each goal has a set of strategies to achieve the goal. And finally, the appendices, which provides details on the approach, lists of advisory committee members, participants in the engagement process, indicators that were used to develop the plan, the city and county of Peterborough, and each participating township. Next slide, please. Through the extensive process of creating the plan, the need and desire of every person to belong, no matter their life situation, identities, experiences, loud and clear, and is therefore central to the plan. For some, there is already a strong sense of belonging in and to their community, neighborhood, and family. For others, the barriers to belonging are complex, affected by daily intersecting realities that make it extremely difficult to be safe and to feel safe, to have opportunities to participate in community, and to have access to resources that meet their basic needs. At the heart of the plan is the desire to create the conditions in our community under which everyone is able to access safe, affordable, and appropriate housing, and to access income, food security, and the health and mental supports they need to feel safe and well. Next slide, please. Based on significant research, data analysis, and community engagement, 5 areas have been identified as the most important priorities to support community safety and well-being. The 5 priorities are housing and homelessness, poverty and income security, healthcare and mental health, substance use and addictions, and transportation. Next slide, please. This slide shows the process we undertook to develop the plan and also the timeline. This process was based off the guidelines outlined in the provincial framework. So the process began with the formation of an advisory committee, which Chris spoke to, representatives from municipalities and community organizations across sectors. From here, we did a deep dive into relevant community plans, research, and data. We then conducted significant consultation with the community, which I will speak to in a moment. And from here, priority areas were validated and risk factors were identified. We then worked with existing cross-sectoral groups who were already actively addressing these priority areas to gather advice on outcomes, goals, and strategies that should be included in the plan. Next slide, please. Thank you. As you see on this slide, many groups, initiatives, and individuals contributed valuable information, experiences, perspectives, and ideas to the development of the plan. Due to the scope and timeline of the project, there were some limitations on the number and types of consultation activities that could be conducted. And while there was significant engagement, the development of the plan also relied on the outcomes of authentic engagement activities from other recent consultations. Outcomes of engagement are described in 2 reports that are available online and were used to inform the development of strategies related to each priority areas. And these were the Service Provider Engagement Report, which outlines findings from 8 focus group sessions, the 22 meetings held with intersectoral groups and service providers, and 4 presentations to police services boards. And the second report is the Public Consultation Report, which outlines findings from the online public survey, the 2 meetings held with lived experience advisory groups, and the 2 town hall meetings and 5 presentations to township councils. Next slide, please. With the completion of community consultations, established community planning and partnership groups who are already actively working to address priority areas were engaged to advise the City and County of Peterborough on outcomes and strategies related to each specific priority area. And we refer to these as action tables because they are already actively doing the work. So in this slide, we have identified the different groups who generously agreed to be action tables in the development of the plan. Next slide, please. In the plan, we include a high-level overview of data and demographics for the city and county. We also include overviews of each township. And here on this slide are some of the key indicators and community trends that we address in the plan. Next slide, please. So in the plan, we share some data that speaks to the interconnectedness of safety and well-being. We know that when people are well, they are more able to prevent, reduce, and heal from harms. And when communities are safe, it is easier for people to thrive, belong. On this slide, we've included a couple of relevant pieces of information that we cover more in depth in the plan. Just like to note that there are many more. But while we speak to many challenges that we face as a community, we thought we would share some positives, including that indicate that they have a slightly higher sense of belonging than provincial and national levels, and that many survey respondents would recommend their community as a good place to live. Next slide, please. As part of the plan, we also asked about perceptions of crime, and we also looked at data that is collected by services and the OPP. So you will note that based on the results of the survey, there are perceptions that crime has increased quite significantly in the city, but also in the county. And based on the data, overall crime has increased in the city since 2018, as have calls to service. And in the county, calls to service have increased, but crime itself has decreased. Next slide, please. So this slide shows a little bit more of a breakdown in some trends of actual crime statistics from 2018 to 2021. And again, these patterns speak to the importance of police being able to address emergency responses and address crime, and also demonstrates the need for community investments in prevention and social development to help build the capacity of police to respond to emergencies. Next slide, please. So the community safety offers 19 specific goals and 63 detailed strategies that address risk intervention, prevention, and social development to meet the goals. It's important to note that while some strategies appear under one priority, many of them are applicable across all of the priority areas. I'll briefly present each priority area and the identified outcome for each area. And on the right-hand side of the slides, you will see the goals associated with each of those priority areas. So the first is housing and homelessness. And the outcome statement that was identified is that all residents have access to quality housing they can afford. Next slide, please. The second priority area is poverty and income security. And the outcome statement is that all residents have equitable access to income security and are valued for their contributions. Next slide, please. The third priority area is healthcare and mental health. And the outcome statement is that every resident has access to healthcare and mental health supports. Next slide, please. Priority area is substance use and addictions. And the outcome statement is that we will reduce harms related to substance use. Next slide, please. And last, but certainly not least, is active transportation and connectivity. And the outcome statement is that people are connected to programs and services that meet their needs. Next slide, please. Thanks. So throughout the engagement sessions, it was clear that for this cross-sectoral collaboration to be successful, it will take a shared understanding of approaches and commitment to certain core values. In many ways, these approaches and values are just as important to the success of the plan as the goals and the strategies that are outlined. So on the right-hand side of this slide, we have outlined the shared approaches and values that are described in detail in the plan. So now I will pass it over to Chris to share about next steps.
Thank you, Christy. So the first next step is what we're doing right now. We're bringing the community safety and wellbeing plan to all councils. How about Belleville Methuen Council adopted the plan earlier today. The next step over the next few months is to be working on an implementation strategy. These A to H items are listed in the cover report that I supplied with more explanation. So we'll be researching and looking at options for each of these. I will key on the 2D there in connection with the funding. Just to note that the province did not supply any funding for the development of this plan, the work we're doing now, nor for the implementation of this plan. Adopting this plan doesn't have any financial implications for the municipality. It'll be future councils that decide if local funds are assigned to different activities, but we will be looking to the province. We will be looking to grants to resource any strategies as we move forward. And then there are things in the plan that don't require funding, just require different steps or different approaches to activities. Number 3, convening a summit on housing, homelessness, and addictions is something that through City Council back in December and upcoming through County Council has become a priority to have this multi-sectoral, multi-government meeting, which I am working on and discussing internally over the, actually right now over the next few days. And then how the plan can support community-based and organizational planning so that it's integrated into the work of community organizations. Next step, please. Next slide, please, I mean. Be happy to answer any questions that council may have for us.
Okay, anybody? Do I see a hand? Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Clarkson. This looks like really good work. I don't think anybody could argue with the focus areas that you've identified. They're pretty generic and there's nothing that's a surprise in there, I think. Obviously, the most important part of this will be the implementation plan. Who's going to do what kind of time frame, et cetera. So I think the only question I would ask is, what's your time frame for developing the implementation plan? And then do you have any kind of a schedule around the actual implementation?
We're through you, Mayor Clarkson. Thank you for the question. The implementation plan will be made this year and brought to the new councils in the new year for their approval. The province has indicated that this is going to be a 4-year renewable plan. They haven't made that official yet, but it looks like, if we're adopting it now, 2026 will be renewing the plan. As part of that implementation strategy, we will be looking at, indicators and measurable outcomes for the plan, which we will, whether it's online or annual reports or how we do it, reporting back on the progress of the implementation as well.
Great, thank you.
Gary?
Okay, thank you, through you. I'm just wondering what your feel is. I mean, it's more of a comment really, that we're going to get some participation from both federal, provincial, county levels of, to start funding this, because we need to have some way to pay for this if we're going to try and implement it.
Through you, Mayor Clarkson. I think it was Alana who mentioned it earlier, and other municipalities who have adopted these plans and shared their experiences with us is that cross-sectoral collaboration, and the reason why we have to look at doing things differently out of silos. And we all know that ministry funding is often very targeted, has specific reporting and specific needs. However, I'll speak, for social services, we have to look at things differently. We aren't funded to deal with addictions issues or mental health issues, but we have an enormous interest in helping folks who are, say, on an Ontario Works caseload or homeless or dealing with housing issues, to help them. So while we have always had relationships with, say, CMHA and Forecast and Peterborough Youth Services, those have to change in a more integrated way. We have to do our outreach differently. We have to do our case collaboration differently if we're going to make a difference with the folks that are dealing with the issues that are identified in this plan.
Okay. Okay, I have a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just comment about implementation may be difficult in this municipality. Half of the municipality gears their services towards Peterborough, the other half to Lindsay. Transportation, when you talk to people about transportation, it depends where they live. They would either like transportation to Lindsay or transportation to Peterborough. So I think implementation in a rural municipality like we have may be very difficult.
Through your, Mayor Clarkson, through the years that I've been in this position, that has been true for many municipalities, but I have a little better understanding of Trent Lake's challenges, given the number of committees I've sat on in your municipality. One positive aspect, and this is noted in my cover report, I am working on developing service hubs right now with Community Care in Apsley and in Havelock, and with Agilic, the employment agency in Lakefield, around not only making those offices open to other agencies. Our staff have traditionally been in your municipality delivering service, using the library and your municipal office, and I think we were in the fire hall for a little bit as well, and in the Galway Hall also, delivering service, but that was just our staff. We're going to be working in those 3 locations to start, trying to open them up to other organizations. So folks like CMHA or PARN or YWCA or any agency can book time in those offices to do rural outreach, but also to book them for their clients, so that if I'm sitting in Peterborough and I have a client who needs to meet me and would like to meet virtually, like we are right now, that they might be able to book that Apsley office and have a face-to-face conversation versus me spending an hour driving out for one meeting, just trying to balance needs and time, that will be an option as well versus the travel requirements. Certainly doesn't help if you have a medical appointment or if you have to be, in Lindsay or in Peterborough. However, that is one of the things we're working on to help with that access to service.
Chris, I was thinking in the night after having read through what you've got here. I think what we're lacking here is the living wage. When that was introduced about, I guess, what is it, 3 or 4 years ago now, and I think there were 100 families between Peterborough and Lindsay that were brought in on that pilot program. It was doing extremely well. And I was campaigning, so I know it's 4 years ago. And I talked to a young couple, and they were part of that program. And they said it was the first time since they'd been married that they could pay for the rent of their basement apartment without having to go back to their parents. So a living wage could help help a lot of these young people. Doesn't matter whether you're talking to resorts or construction people, whoever, nobody can get anybody to work. But who can afford to work for minimum wage or $20 an hour with the costs that are out there? But the living wage tops them up to the point that they can possibly rent something or whatever. So I'm going to bring a notice of motion to the next meeting asking that we do just this, petition the provincial government to look at this again, because my understanding was that it was doing extremely well. Could you comment on that, please?
I can comment from what my understanding is, and I do share your understanding that it was benefiting those folks. Coming from a social services perspective, we know that if you, for the majority of folks who are struggling with low income, below the poverty line, if they do receive additional income, the vast majority will use it to meet their basic needs. You'll always have people who abuse the system. It's pretty tough to prevent that in any system, but most of the people reflect, or the example that you used, will use it to cover their basic needs, whether it's around health, nutrition, rent, education, childcare, whatever it may be. So I am in favor of that. And just a terminology thing that I'm not sure if you meant one thing versus another. It was a basic income guarantee that was being implemented versus a living wage, which living wage, Municipality of Trent Lakes has control over that. If you adopted a living wage and made sure you paid everybody, I think at this point, and others, Alana or Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, United Way does studies into a living wage is around $18 or $19 an hour. That, employers can choose to pay a living wage. It's not up to the province. But as far as the basic income, that comes through Ontario Works, social assistance, and ODSP. So that's what the province controls, and that was the pilot that was taking place under the previous government in Lindsay. So it's the basic income that was piloted. If you were to have a motion go through.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I'd just like to make one comment. A couple of months ago, my son moved into Habitat for Humanity. There was the grand opening of the building, and I was somehow shocked. I thought it would be mostly young people, but the people that took advantage of that program were anywhere between 21 and 70 years old. So it's not only young people that are struggling in today's economy, it's also people that are seniors, pre-seniors. It's a big issue out there, and that was really nice to see that. I think it was 54 families received accommodations that they could afford.
No, I wasn't meaning that this was the young, it was just a young couple that had given the.
No, I understand.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that was a person had to be working in order to get that.
Yeah.
Because they topped up their income. They
Yeah.
didn't provide an income. So it was easier to make sure that the system was not being railroaded. Okay, any other questions? Then can I have a motion to receive Deputy Mayor Windover? And yes,
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, the recommendation that Chris has provided is on the screen. So Deputy Dover, is that the motion that you're prepared to make?
Yes.
Thank you.
and the seconder to that motion would be Councillor Franzen. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, we'll now have a presentation from Tyler Peters, Project Director for Greenview regarding design of the new dedicated mechanics facility. Please unmute your audio, share your camera, and make a presentation. You also will have 20 minutes. And council, please save your questions till the end of the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council staff for having myself today. I'm providing a presentation to council with respect to the municipality's new dedicated mechanics facility project located at the existing 49 depot site. Next slide, please. So today, just be providing kind of a general review, obviously the details of the specifics of the design. We can't get into in any great element of detail, but we'll certainly be hitting on the key points of where the project is, kind of the highlights and some of the challenges and key design aspects. And we have an updated construction cost based on recent projects that we've been involved with, and talk a little bit about next steps. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about our firm. We're a municipal consultant primarily, focusing on small rural asset management and engineering type of projects. As per our name, we originally started in the environmental and sustainability sector, and based on servicing municipalities in central and eastern Ontario, kind of developed our building and site engineering expertise over the past 15 years. So we're in our 16th year now, and very busy as it is. Next slide, please. So just some background and opportunities for council. I believe the last time we presented was in 2021. As council is aware, the municipality has done a number of different studies and reviews with respect to optimizing the need for primarily or initially for public works and maintenance servicing needs for the long term. As with many municipalities in Ontario, certainly in the small rural sector, we have aging infrastructure, and that is something that's been identified certainly through these studies. Energy consumption and reporting by the municipality over the number of years has also shown that these type of buildings are poor energy performers, and obviously that contributes to a significant cost. That also is a target of these type of projects. So council determined through these studies that a new facility for maintenance of the municipal fleet and equipment, again, primarily in the public works sector, was required. And that project was kind of kicked off heading into early 2021. And through the performance of the project, and there have been a number of elements that have kind of been addressed, and we'll talk about those shortly. There was a need for administrative and storage needs for the Recreation and Facilities Department, and there's an opportunity there to kind of combine those two departments under one roof, as it were. Next slide, please. So the preliminary design and study phases primarily completed in 2021. Our firm worked with the municipality in 2017 under kind of a different focus and objective for the project. We brought forward those initial concepts from that facility, sizing, use, and have worked with staff and of course council under your direction with respect to optimizing some of those elements. And as it turns out, as we work through those over the past year or so, a lot of those elements have generally remained the same. There's a master planning process that's been undertaken as well with the project, addressing site unknowns. So we've had a couple of things that weren't previously identified with the existing garage building in terms of its longer range use. There have been certainly discussions of staff and council in that regard. And then there, of course, as I mentioned with the Recreation and Facilities Department, there is a need to accommodate growth in another department outside of Public Works. So that's been brought forward as well. So there have been 2 reports issued in 2021. First was on the existing garage building and its potential and condition. And secondly was the shared space needs study, which was presented through council in June of last year as well. Next slide, please. So for the project, specifically for the dedicated mechanics facility, we've worked through an optimized design to accommodate the space needs for both departments. And in council's wisdom, there certainly was that opportunity to do so, and it was determined that that was feasible through those studies I mentioned earlier. The primary focus, of course, is a maintenance facility for primarily Public Works fleet and equipment, but secondarily, of course, is to have office space, administrative space, etc., available to both Public Works staff as well as recreation and facility staff, whom are growing, and that was identified and has been captured. We've, of course, carried forward energy efficiency elements in the project, including optimizations of systems, looking at operating cost savings with HVAC systems, for example, and that kind of thing, but ensuring that those systems are still functional, so they're durable and easily constructible is important as well in terms of today's costs. We have also accounted for future building expansion if and when that may ever happen or be needed based on future needs. So we've reserved some space for that. And then the existing garage building and the winter sand domes were again studied, and with respect to the winter sand domes, the municipalities identified that they are in poor condition, and that has been kind of considered into the scope of the overall project and budgeting accordingly. Next slide, please. Just a few, breaking into the site and the building. I'm sure council is aware of the existing site. You can see its location and its current development area of the property on County Road 49. The existing garage, the 2 sand domes, and that's primarily the gist of it as it exists now. Of course, there are fuel pumps and things like that on site. And they're adjacent to residential properties to the west across the road, which is the city of Kawartha Lakes boundary. And then we have residential to the east and to the south. Next slide, please. So included in the design for the site works is new grading and drainage for stormwater management, including a pond and a weir. And working with staff, we've been successful to secure an environmental compliance approval, an ECA, with the Ministry of the Environment for the project. That's been completed. It's a big step and not always easy. It certainly is not timely, but we were able to work closely with everyone in the summer, starting the summer, get a submission in the summer to complete that. So that's been taken care of. We're relocating the existing fueling station to kind of go with the new building. And we'll see this on the slide, the next slide in a second. The existing winter sand domes are proposed to be replaced with one larger facility with a side pure salt element, and that'll be worked through during the construction phase. One of the additional kind of unknowns that came up during the project was the need or requirement for a noise barrier based on the proximity of residential to the site and the relocation of the garage. So that's an important element that has come to light. We have new fire, water, storage, and hydrant works associated with the building code for a site that's not municipally serviced. We have new sewage treatment facilities and works that are required for the project, and a new water supply well. Those are kind of the key points that are incorporated into the site design. And you'll see that on the next slide, please. So I apologize to council. Whenever we present drawings, we are challenged by the fact that it's hard to see the resolution, but we have shown the existing, for example, for reference, you can see the existing garage being the rectangle to the top, and the existing sand domes, the two circles to the top right. We're showing a proposed replacement, a larger winter sand dome, showing the new building, some of the parking and site works, the relocation of the fueling station. To the bottom right of your screen will be the proposed stormwater management pond and its weir. For the most part, we're not anticipating any flows over the weir at any time, even very close to the 100-year storm possibly. On the west side of the site, we have the entrance. We have new fire water storage tanks, and the volumes of those is still being worked through, and I'll speak to that in the budgetary discussion shortly. We have a new sewage treatment facility or basically septic system to install to serve the new building. With all the changes, we have some drainage, perimeter drainage works, and new paving. So that's generally the extent of the site design. You can see on the south bottom of your screen, there's a 70-meter long sound barrier wall. That was a requirement, as I noted earlier. One of the municipality undertook a noise impact study, that required that length and size of a noise barrier wall. The height of this structure is to be confirmed with final grading, but we're in the range of 4 to 5 meters in height. This has turned into a challenging element with the overall site design, as you can appreciate, having very little space to construct this. So this will be worked out as well in terms of full details and particulars during the construction phase. Next slide, please. With respect to the design of the building, our size of building, and this has been something that we've worked closely with staff and council over the past while, including going back to the 2017 original concepts to current. We're just over 17,000 square feet in area. Basically, the depth of the building is 100 feet, and the width of the building is 170 feet. We are working with 4 maintenance bays, and those maintenance bays, of course, are the primary element to this building. We have 2 vehicle / equipment wash bays, primarily an extension to the maintenance requirements for the building. We are 4 vehicle storage bays on the east end, so this is just primarily for public works equipment to be stored out of the elements, primarily, of course, in the winter months, so that proper inspection, safety inspection, such can be done prior to them heading out in an operational setting. We have ancillary space, which would include offices, break lunchroom, washrooms, a locker area, and a large storage room area that is important for both departments and the use of the building. And another key point here is a large mezzanine area, which I'll show in one of the next 2 slides, please. Again, just a challenge in terms of providing a drawing in a slide format, but this is north is up on your screen. On the west end of the building is primarily our ancillary spaces, offices, break room, lunchroom, washrooms, that kind of thing. Lockers in the middle corridor with the primary employee entrance, and in the south. So bottom left is our large main floor storage for parts, equipment, tools, that kind of thing. In the middle portion of the building, you see the large area, open area for the maintenance bays. Again, the configuration is a drive-through system where vehicles can access either by backing in or pulling in, or drive through from the bottom of the page through to the top of the page. To the right of that, you'll see a dedicated kind of double wash bay area that will also, and you'll see this in the next slide, has a raised platform so that the top of equipment can also be properly washed and inspected as part of the use and the maintenance of equipment. And then on the far right of the screen, you see 4 equipment storage bays, primarily again for public works equipment to be stored in out of the elements, and in only a storage kind of function. So this is the ground floor or main floor. Next slide, please. This is a mezzanine plan, and for mezzanine being kind of an upper level, it's not a second story by code, with all due respect, but generally it's referred to as a storage mezzanine, and you can see a large service room in the top left of your page, and this will house the majority of mechanical, electrical services for the building, which of course again is a large building. We have a storage mezzanine on the above, the ancillary space, below being the storage room and some of the office and lunchroom areas, washrooms, etc. The shaded section is kind of the operating limits of a 5-ton overhead crane, based on the detailed consultation with staff and the municipality overall as to what servicing they need and what tools they need to maintain the fleet. We've worked closely with staff and specialists to identify and design this element and area. Of course, you can see the shading carries to the left of your screen over the storage mezzanine itself, and that provides the opportunity for larger items to be craned, lifted onto the storage mezzanine for longer term storage. That could include snow plows, larger parts, larger types of equipment and tools and things like that, as the municipality may wish to have. I mentioned the decking in the wash bay. You can see kind of that grid section of decking on the left side of the wash bay, and this allows inspections and cleaning of equipment from a higher level, and then in the equipment storage bay, of course, that's open, and we don't have any mezzanine elements to that to speak to. Next slide, please. So just some elevations of the building as you would see it from the north side and the west side. So the north side would be basically standing at the existing garage and looking south. So this is the north elevation facing north, and then the west elevation facing County Road 49. You'll see a few of the features here. Obviously, you'll notice the split in the building height. The building height is to be confirmed with final crane design, which is imminent from an outside supplier. But we're trying to optimize costs with respect to the design such that only this section that would include the crane is of course the higher building part, and then the wash bay in the middle door, and then the two doors on the left you see in the north elevation, primarily again for storage. We have some architectural features in terms of veneer brick and some masonry. This is generally consistent with other municipal buildings, say the Nogies Creek Fire Hall that we've designed, trying to bring some of those elements in, as well as kind of a canopy element that would provide some overhang through doors and windows on the north and the west, and as well as to some extent the south elevation that we'll show on the next slide, please. Again, looking from the south, looking at the building from the south side, you can see the canopy wraps around the building, provides overhang to the service door. This goes direct into the storage room. You see that on the overhead door under the canopy on the top or south elevation on the left-hand side. Again, the split building height, again, to be confirmed with final crane drawings, but we're trying to optimize the daylighting in terms of natural light in the building as much as possible in a kind of heavier industrial building application. And then the east elevation, which is on the far east of the site, this end is primarily towards the quote unquote forest and the stormwater pond, and that's been shown primarily just as its exterior without windows and that kind of thing on the storage side to maintain and control cost. Next slide, please. Focusing on the ancillary areas, so our offices and washrooms, this is a layout that we've worked with staff on to receive comment. Of course, we're accommodating now both departments and their office needs. So we have a total of 5 offices. We have a staff room. We have larger men's and women's washrooms, as well as a universal washroom, all per code requirements. And then we have a set of lockers through the employee entrance coming in. So on the left side of your screen is the kind of northern portion, more towards the middle of the site, and then on the right-hand side of your screen is the storage section, which is, of course, below. And you can see that the storage element was something that both departments were very interested in having for any number of products and materials, lubricants, that kind of thing, organized and out of the way. And that's been developed based on the design work to date. Next slide, please. Focusing on some highlights, of course, with the project. Although the site seems quite large, using the existing entrance and its location, there certainly are some challenges. It's a very flat site, so that's important to take into consideration, but we've been able to optimize that through the design work to date. So we feel that with retaining at this point the existing garage and the replacement of the sand domes with a single sand dome in the future, we've really had the opportunity to optimize that. We have a drive-through bay configuration, which is becoming more and more common if you have the space to do so. So that allows certainly for larger equipment or trucks or tandems with trailers and floats to not have to back up and potentially cause damage to your building. So that's important and has been able to be accommodated. We are looking at a single building system in this case. So looking at a pre-engineered metal building, which is again most common for this kind of application. And as I noted earlier about the mezzanine space, this is a kind of a bit of a hidden gem in the design where you have approximately 4,000 square feet of mezzanine space on the west end of the building that can be used for longer term storage because you have the servicing from the overhead crane. As you saw on one of the other slides, The area of operational area of the overhead crane is considerable within the maintenance bays and up onto the storage mezzanine. So that's important. We've optimized the building envelope, so we're certainly meeting building code minimums, but we're also looking at options there to balance cost, both for products as well as installation cost. We have been and will continue to look at optimizing the HVAC system. So that's basically been selected through the process, and final design is underway based on our design meetings with staff. We are retaining future rooftop solar PV potential. Now that's not specifically part of the project in terms of the actual installation of a PV system, but we're retaining that in the structural design of the project and the electrical design. And then I guess a big part of this as we look at climate change is the municipality is considered certainly being environmentally responsible. So we're doing checking all the boxes in terms of stormwater, drainage, noise, as well as water conservation and control and energy efficiency. So all of those things have been carried forward in the project and moving into to finalizations here in the coming weeks. Next slide, please. As council can appreciate, with highlights, there are always some challenges. And as I noted earlier, the site, although again, in what you've seen in some of the photographs and the aerial, it certainly seems like a large site, but we've also been challenged with trying to ensure that all the bits and pieces and the size of the equipment that the municipality has can work and function on the site. As we identified with the change in the need to change the winter sand domes, that's presented a new element to the project, and the noise barrier, the noise study and its findings in its construction certainly has presented a number of challenges for the municipality in the design, but we believe we worked through that and we'll be able to further work through that with the contractor during the construction phases. In any project of this size and magnitude, I'm sure council can appreciate there are significant costs. And moving from what is there now in terms of a functional small kind of storage garage and winter sand type depot, we're into a new element with the project in terms of the size of the development and its function. And there are costs associated with that that are not protected from the challenges of the recent pandemic and market conditions. Next slide, please. So within the slide deck, we've included a budgetary cost summary. With respect to that, we have carried forward some unit costs that we have seen or been privy to as a result of recent projects. Now, some of these are going to vary based on geographic location of projects and that kind of thing. But we've presented new information here, both for the building and for the site works for council's review. For your review and understanding. We just recently tendered a project in Millbrook for Cavan Monaghan for their new fire station in Millbrook. And although we don't have all the particulars of things, we do have a good sense because the buildings are similar in their function and their classification and use. So carrying those through, we've presented some unit costs here. And there are some new elements that council has included in the project that weren't there before. There also is a clarification here with respect to the fire water servicing I want to speak a little bit about that we've had just recent discussions too with staff. So the overhead crane has a cost to it as a special equipment item. Those are not typical in all facilities of this type in nature. Working with staff, we have been able to secure pricing from a qualified and experienced supplier in that regard. And that number is generally a firm number subject to final construction timing and such, but the municipality has secured an agreement with a supplier for that. So that number is generally firm. Under the site works, for our firewater servicing, current estimates are in the range between 300,000 and 400,000 liters. That is based on the volumetric size or the volume of the new building being the worst case building on the site. So once we have the final crane drawings, we'll be able to confirm the final height of the building and calculate the final volume. In our experience, these type of firewater servicing systems, primarily large, in our experience, primarily large concrete tanks, have a cost in the range of $2 to $4 a liter, all supplied, all installed, finished, done. Obviously, that's a significant cost in the budget you see before you. We do think that's conservative, as in high, but in terms of looking at costs and the size of tanks and the configuration, the final details in that will be worked through as well. But that is an element, I'm sure, that raised council's eyebrows when you had an opportunity to look at that estimate. So staff have already, of course, raised their eyebrows with us, as Chelsea always does with me, which is great. So we've gone through a bit of a review process there in terms of those costs. We've talked to suppliers. We just understand that the tanks, the purchase of the tanks and having them transported to site is a certain cost, but the installation of these facilities is another element. And we need to be careful about what those costs are. We're carrying a budget value of $1 million for the new winter sand salt storage works. So that is proposed as a cash allowance item under the contract. So it'd be kind of a design build, which is the specialty of these kind of service providers. There are a few of those in Ontario that are specialists in that field, and it's better value to the municipality to have those designed and of course constructed by a specialist, as opposed to, for example, our firm trying to design something that's generally proprietary. So we've included that number, which wasn't part of the previous estimate. And then we've got a slight adjustment in our parking lot area as a result of the replacement of the sand domes and budgeting there. So you can see our total or subtotal for building and site works at this point is in the range of $10 million. Our contingency is a plus minus. So depending on a number of factors, and goodness knows these days with the pandemic influence and market influences external to what any of us can control, we apply a 20% range and we provide a budget based on a low and high value. Council will recall that the low value at 8 million was basically on target with the previous estimates, including the new winter sand storage works, which I understand from previous meetings was estimated at $1 million. So our previous estimates were around 7. We add in the $1 million for the new winter sand storage works, so that takes us to 8. We've also added in the noise barrier works, which wasn't part of the scope, frankly, at the outset, that the municipality is now required to manage. So I think we're generally, although some of the numbers have changed, certainly in terms of unit costs or quantities, in general, we're still in the same range or ballpark with respect to generally budget. Obviously, the high number is not necessarily what any one of us want to see, but just trying to reflect current market conditions. Next slide, please. So where we are with today's presentation, we're busy behind the scenes with final design and engineering in the project, working towards tender documentation for the end of the month. We are intending, subject to council's direction, to tender the project commencing in August and have a construction tender review process completed. Usually it's a 4 to 5 week, depending on the size of the project, tender period. And then September, we would have a review and recommendation to council at that time. Subject to the receipt of tenders and council's wishes, direction, construction would start at a suitable time after that. So we are, based on the size of the project and the nature of the work, we are estimating a timeline of approximately 18 to 24 months from start to full finish. And of course, we have to deal with weather conditions. So where if for example, the work is nearing completion heading into the winter months, certain landscaping aspects will need to be postponed into the spring of the following year and that kind of thing. So next slide, please. Through you, your worship, of course, open to any questions.
Oh, I think you're going to get a few. I'm looking for hands. I see one.
I think Peter got his up first.
Okay.
So I'll defer to him first.
All right.
I was just wondering if you were able to look at the ground source heating system.
So ground source heating systems for this magnitude, this size of a building, we looked at it earlier on through you, your worship. We looked at it earlier on in the project, and we are looking at we are carrying forward an in-floor radiant heating system. The in-floor radiant heating systems are slightly higher in capital cost, but they are significantly more beneficial in terms of heating efficiencies. And secondly, they drastically cut operating cost. So we're challenged by the fact that we're still looking at a fossil fuel source being propane, primarily in the municipality at this point in time, and there could be the options for natural gas in the future, of course. But we looked at the option of a ground source heating system originally, and we need either a multitude of vertical wells to be installed to make that work, and secondly, or we need a large area for ground loops, so horizontal loops, to make that work. The cost of doing so was prohibitive for this size of building, whereas smaller buildings, say 5,000 square feet or less, sometimes become more cost effective.
Okay. Carol?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually have, I think, 5 questions for you. First one is, why is solar PV identified as potential? Why wouldn't that have been incorporated or integrated into the building design?
Through you, your worship, it is included in the building design. It's just the actual installation of a solar system is not included in the scope at this point in time. We have to incorporate structural design and electrical provisions for solar PV at such time the municipality wishes to install a system itself. Now, I'm sure, I trust that council is aware that the changes in the in the various programs through Hydro One, et cetera, in terms of solar systems has changed. So really, we're only working in the net metered realm of PV generation that would be of benefit to a project of this size. Off-grid is not really the option for this building, of course, due to its size and its needs. But the provisions within the building, just to be clear, the provisions within the design of the building are there for future PV project installation.
Okay, thank you. Should I go ahead with that? Okay, thank you. Second one, it wasn't clear from your presentation what the existing garage will be repurposed for. So what are we going to use the existing garage for? And does it need any upgrades or repairs to be functional?
So through you, your worship, thank you for the question. We did study that particular building and issued a report to the municipality in earlier on in 2021. There have been various discussions and deliberations about what it could or could not be used for and the scope of which what repairs or renovations may be determined. At this point in time, staff have given direction to us to hold on that, and just because our focus right now is on the new facility and getting that element of the project completed. So I presume there'll be further discussions through staff to council in that regard.
I think I'm okay with that, although I don't know what we'd be holding it for if we're building all of the new functionality into the new building, but that's okay. The third question, where would future expansion go if we needed to? I think you said there was provision for future expansion. Where would that go?
So if it's possible, could you go to slide, apologies, just the site view. There you go, perfect. So thank you. Through you, your worship, on the eastern portion or eastern end, if you will, of the building, there is significant space between the building and the new fueling station. That area may accommodate additional expansion of the building if needed. So effectively it would be an addition on the end of the building that could house, and the primary intention here, if there is a need, would primarily be for additional storage of vehicles to get them out of the weather, is primarily what we're seeing here. So and in our experience, what the uses would be for that. So be on the east end of the building, and the specifics of that haven't been worked through, other than a general area has been accommodated in the site plan design.
Great, thank you. Number 4, I think probably goes to Evan, but I just want confirmation from our staff that this design that you presented is acceptable to them, that they concur with all of the things you said.
Sorry, your worship, is that directed to myself or?
I'd like to hear from Evan if he's on the line.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Armstrong, through you, Mayor Clarkson. We are still in the review stages of the design, so there's been some back and forth between the municipality and Greenview. Can't say that we're 100% satisfied with the design as presented today. Obviously, there's still some back and forth, and the final design hasn't been completed yet. So, but for what we need, the sizing and everything like that is what is exactly what we need. But it's just into the finer details is what I'm more specifically speaking to.
Okay, fair enough, Evan. Thank you, and we'll leave the finer details up to you. That's a staff job. And the final question would have gone to Donna. But maybe it goes to you, Chastity, I'm not sure. Costs. Since this project is starting late and will spill over into next year at least, I'm assuming we can cover any additional costs through next year's budget and 2024 budget. But I just want to confirm that, I think we've budgeted about $7 million for it this year. So I just want to confirm that we're able to fund what expenses will come in this year with the dollars that we've budgeted. And if not, then what are our plans to cover any excess? So again, it would have been to Donna. With Donna not here, whoever wants to take on that one, go for it.
You might want to hold it to the next meeting too.
Sure, if you're not comfortable answering that, then that's fine.
Right.
Please say so. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. I'm just trying to understand our funding.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I haven't had a chance to look at it. I just got back, so I haven't really had a chance to look over the financials for it. So it would be best to probably hold off till the next meeting so Donna can answer that for you.
No, that's fair. Thank you, Cassidy. If we could just make sure that question gets.
Sorry, through you, Mayor Clarkson, to Councillor Armstrong. Just with the process in the tendering and the size of this tender, we will have to bring back another report when we finalize the tender details to award it. At that time, Donna would speak more specifically to the funding. However, the 7 million that we have budgeted for this year would be enough if construction did get started to get the construction going. But more details with the financing would come back with the tendering approval report, which would be ideally end of September, October sort of thing.
Right. No, thanks for that, Evan. And I think you're right. Because of the delay, we certainly can cover with the budget we have for this year, but we need to understand future financing for it as well. Great. Thank you. That's it. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Anybody else?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I just have a few questions. I mean, have we explored any grant opportunities that would be available to help finance this thing? I mean, it's a huge undertaking for the municipality of Trent Lakes with our fairly small tax base. I'm just wondering if staff have had any chance to explore any ideas for grants. I mean, that's not a question I expect answered today. That's something for the future. And the sand domes, I see we're trying to take down 2 small sand domes and replacing 1 large one. Has there been any ideas put forward about a rectangular sand dome that's more like what most municipalities build today? They don't build a sand dome, they build a rectangular structure with concrete walls and a steel roof.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just working with these type of projects, and certainly the Director of Public Works can speak to this in terms of preferences, but the nature of course, sand and any of those type of materials, they tend, once they're placed, to be in the shape of a cone. We're finding that more and more the rectangular fabric covered buildings are being replaced by the newer larger systems, which are circular with walls. So instead of it being what's existing now, primarily with no walls, just the cone on a foundation, is we're seeing a raised foundation wall, so 8-10 feet in height, plus walls above that. So primarily steel wood structure with steel cladding are kind of the new design of these type of buildings we're seeing. So I can speak to that in terms of what we're seeing in current markets and in current conditions, and perhaps other comments can be provided by the director.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Clarkson, just to concur with what Tyler said, Terry, yeah, that's basically when you look at the industry now, with the stackers, which is how the sand is put into the domes, it's like an aggregate stacker. They come out in a cone shaped pile sort of thing. The design that he's speaking to is they appear to be the better way to go with a concrete wall about 2 meters high, 2 to 3 meters once you get into the specifics of the design, but it just allows for more efficient storage. Unfortunately, with the domes that we have right now, the size of the openings of the dome does not allow it to utilize the full capacity of the dome due to the size of the stackers that are common in the industry now. As you probably know, a lot of things in the industry are getting bigger and bigger. So the stackers are a little bit bigger now than they were back in the 1970s when those domes were originally built. So the new dome would accommodate a maximum capacity use of the new facility, the new storage facility.
Thank you. Through you, one more little idea, the height, if you see the elevations, I'm concerned of the height in the wash bays. You have a mezzanine up to get up to see the top of the truck, but that isn't in that area. The roof is low, like the other 2 storage bays. I'm concerned that when you go up onto that top, there's not going to be enough height. I didn't see a dimension for the height of the building. So if you see the elevation of that one, I mean, I'm sure you've seen that, know that, and I'm sure that's been addressed, but it was just a concern of mine.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And through you, Madam Chair, looking at the wash bay itself, so you can see the door height as an example. The door height is 7 feet. It's an 84-inch door, the person door beside the garage door. So that's a 7-foot door, plus we'll have, of course, the walkway will effectively be more or less at that height, so a person will be able to stand above that. Again, looking at optimization of heights of the buildings to keep costs at a minimum. It's often easier to have a building having all one single roof line, but in this case with the crane and its needs, And the larger doors, of course, for the maintenance facility so that they don't have to offload equipment off of floats and things like that to do servicing. That's the configuration we're currently working with. I apologize, I don't have a specific height, but I can just in terms of relate the door height being a 7-foot door, we're likely looking at a clear ceiling height in the range of likely 16 feet to the bottom of structure.
Thank you.
Okay, Terry?
Well, yeah, that's fine. I just had one more little comment.
Go
More
ahead.
than a thing. I mean, the drive-through and drive-out idea is a really good idea for safety of all of our employees. I mean, you don't want somebody backing into a building. You need a spotter there, and things happen when we're backing up. We don't want damaged people, and we certainly don't want damaged buildings either. So the drive-through and drive-out is a very good idea for safety of our employees.
Okay, Peter?
The one thing I didn't realize is that we would be able to maintain the existing building. And one thing I don't understand, I realize it's probably too late in the game, but why didn't Parks and Recreation take over that building for their operation? And why would we have had to expand our building to include Parks and Recreation? And now we have an extra building that at this time, we have no use for, that could have been very easily used by Parks and Rec.
My feeling was that discussion took place.
Yes, we did look at the committee, sorry, through you, Mayor, and the building itself really wasn't suited for that much human inhabitation. It would have needed an extensive amount of renovations, but that was our look at it when we were in the committee.
That was brought up.
Well, I think
it'd still be a good idea.
Yeah, I think it was before you.
Yeah, before I
Oh,
was
yeah.
before you-
involved in it, so.
It was brought up.
The questions that I have are, if normally these buildings are not constructed with a crane, why do we need a crane? And if we've got this building we don't know what to do with, why are we putting plows and things on the top of a structure that could easily be stored in that building that don't need anything? Like, I'm wondering about this mezzanine. Like, are we using a lot of space there that if we're going to keep this other building that will be stored, could not be in there? How expensive is it? Where's the crane? How often is it going to be used? What's it going to be used for?
So in response to certain elements of your questions, Madam Mayor, so with respect to the crane itself, when I noted that, stated that it's not always the case where small municipal facilities have overhead cranes. That is the case. Now, the reality is that we find, be it mobile type equipment, so something that can move around within the bay, which is similar to what you have now at the Buckhorn Depot, or unfortunately, we also see systems that are attached to beams in the garage that are not designed to take those loads. So makeshift cranes are often also incorporated into projects and buildings. So in this case, it's been the project has been designed and is process of being designed to accommodate that equipment based on municipal needs, so staffing needs, servicing needs, maintenance needs. That was incorporated throughout the project going back a number of years and confirmed as part of the design process through 2021. With respect to storing plows on inside up on the mezzanine, again, that's going to be an option for obviously employees and staff. They're obviously most commonly left outside or possibly in the existing garage is also an opportunity for that. The point I was trying to make was just there can be heavier tools, equipment, products, parts, things like that stored upon that mezzanine that wouldn't be outside, it wouldn't be left outside in the weather for periods of time and can be accommodated within the building securely. So those are the 2 points I can speak to if I'm clear.
Well, what about the extra cost in the reinforcement in that mezzanine to be able to take that kind of weight?
So in response, Madam Mayor, so the structure of the building, so in that part of the building, in terms of the floor of the mezzanine, we're looking at what's called a precast hollow core concrete. So we're just accounting for that in the structure of the building. We are not looking at, significant loads because most of the parts and things like that to be accommodated in that kind of environment are not going to be high point loads. So the structure is not significantly more than what it would be for other use. But again, having the opportunity for staff in public works, primarily public works, maintenance, to be able to store heavier parts in and out of the weather and have them accessible from the crane was part of that design process.
Okay. I'm still not clear on this mezzanine. Go ahead.
I might be able to clarify it for you. Above that office area and all the associated things, you have to have a ceiling anyway.
Yeah.
So it might as well be a ceiling that you can use as a floor to store stuff on. So the expense is already in there. It's just a little upgraded so you can have a storage area to put some heavier things on. And the crane itself, I think, is a necessity for the mechanic and his assistants because everything you go to lift is heavy and you don't want people hurt. So you hook the crane to it and lift it with the crane and you can move it anywhere in that area. I do understand the ceiling of the offices will be the floor of the mezzanine. So there is an expense already, so it's not an upgrade too far.
But there's no problem with stairs in that situation that somebody isn't going to turn around and say that's inaccessible. You got to have an elevator.
No.
I'm sure.
So to answer that, Madam Mayor, so it's an industrial use building, so it's a storage mezzanine as opposed to a second story. And so it's used for industrial purposes. So accessibility, all of the requirements for accessibility are all on the main floor in terms of washrooms and functional things like that. It has a dedicated storage mezzanine type of use as applied in the building code.
Okay. The other question I had when you were talking about the water store, or I imagine it's fire, and you talked about the cost of building it and transporting it. Why couldn't it be built on site?
So thank you for the question. There are two options based on the size of what we're dealing with. So, sorry, three options typically. One is precast concrete tanks are hooked in series, connected in series with a single hydrant. So the number of tanks based on the code calculation for volume. There's the option to do fiberglass or other poly type tanks, so non-concrete precast tanks is also an option. The third is a cast in place, so basically formed and cast in place area. So tank that would be built on site, as you mentioned, Your Worship, is also an option based on final quantity, so final volume of water required. So we're looking at that again as we finalize the building height and calculate the building volume. We'll be able to know the final volumetric requirement for that, and we'll be looking at all three of those. There may be, of course, that opportunity to do an on-site construction of such a tank, but the structure and the design of that will be something significant in terms of size, and the cost may be prohibitive against a precast tank where these are made every day by suppliers in the GTA primarily for these purposes. So excellent question, and it's still to be confirmed.
Okay. And I guess the last question follows on what Terry was saying. If and when this comes to fruition and grants, now when we touch accessibility, which is going to be in there, water conservation, all the rest of these things, once a project is out there, is it too late to apply for a grant, or do we have to look for grants first? And this may be something, again, that we have to wait till Donna comes back for. But if you look at the grants that are being passed around, there's a tremendous amount of money that we may be able to get our hands on, and we don't want somebody to turn around and tell us, you're too late.
So our experience, Your Worship, with respect to buildings of this type, including fire halls, is there is effectively no grant type funding available. There are certainly, I'm sure that staff and council are aware of a significant amount of funding applied to community facilities, libraries, municipal hubs. Those type of projects are favored right now in the funding platforms that are available. But in our experience in designing fire halls and public works facilities for 8-9 years now, we haven't really been able to access those type of funds because of availability. There is an opportunity, and it's not necessarily the best, but there is an opportunity through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and their Green Municipal Fund. And that type of project is very focused on environmental benefit and kind of targets and rankings. So there are opportunities for funding to be available for pilot scale studies, which our firm did for another client in Peterborough County. But at the end of that process, it was determined by the municipality that they would be better off in financing their project through Ministry of Infrastructure type programming, as opposed to following the FCM process. Now that FCM process has morphed, it's grown, it's changed a bit into net zero energy, net zero carbon type projects as well. We did look at that with staff in 2021. But since then, there have not been funding opportunities for a building of this type in use in our experience. And that's working on a number of these projects over the past 2 years for sure.
Yes.
I'd like to follow up on that question if I may, Madam Mayor. I think the question is, at what point is it too late to get grants, whether or not they're available? So I'm going to throw out something which may or may not be right, but my sense is as soon as you award a tender for the actual construction, then it is too late to get the grant.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that correct? Or is it once somebody breaks ground under an existing award, is it too late? So if somebody can just clarify at what point it's too late to get the grant.
And I think it depends on the grant that you're applying for.
It does, but most of them, you can't have started the work before you get the grant. And whatever starting the work means, that's where I'm not sure what the definition is.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I can speak to two examples. One is the most recent community, the CCRF funding, which is focused on libraries and community facilities. That project funding is being awarded as we speak in various areas. That is a type of funding that is awarded based on construction readiness. So if you are ready to build, you are eligible for that funding. Whereas FCM's approach, for example, through their funding programs, which does have a grant element, it's small, but it does have a grant element to it. They are looking to get in at first thought of a project so that you are doing pilot scale studies and designs that are focused on their goals and objectives right from the initial outset. So in this case, we did pursue initial funding and studies in 2017 for the project through the through Hydro One's clean energy program, which is now of course defunct. So there are different types of funding. In this case, for this type of building, the focus would need to be on energy conservation, energy demand management, net zero carbon, net zero energy. And we did again look at that with staff in 2021, and it was deemed to be not necessarily a fruitful path.
I'd be interested to know what not necessarily means.
So the point there is that in order to accomplish those milestones and reach those energy and environmental targets, significant capital costs would need to be imposed. So is there a benefit in imposing, for example, a massive solar PV system on the building now at a certain capital cost when its return may be 15 years or longer down the road? So looking at a building of this size and its magnitude and the site works that have been, as you've seen in the presentation today, is there the appetite or the value of council to add additional capital costs to the bottom line of the project for those environmental benefits? And that has to be weighed. So I referenced a project. I'll be upfront. We did a very detailed and energy and environmentally focused project for the township of Duro-Dummer, which had significant capital cost and complexities to construction, which was anticipated to drive the cost of the project up. And council at the time and continues to deliberate on whether that value is still there. And that project has not been finalized, certainly has not gone out to tender as yet, but it's on the radar for something in future planning. So it's a financial balancing element. Certainly the environment is important. There's no question climate change is real, but there has to be a financial accounting and feasibility to implementing those type of elements on a project of this size and scale.
A project of that size, if you were to put the solar on the roof, could that solar not go into batteries and actually provide that building with the electricity that it would require?
So in response to that, an excellent question. I noted earlier with respect to the type of solar systems that would typically be incorporated in this, there could be elements, again, we're looking at a capital cost impact, but there could be elements of storage of energy into batteries, but then you're dealing with the complexity of 2 electrical systems in one building. The primary need or draw of electricity is going to be for maintenance use as well as air conditioning. Those are the primary consumption elements for the building, and having an additional complexity with an off-grid system, batteries, the management of that is not always preferred. It is something that needs to be monitored, maintained, and there's a cost to doing that, be it by municipal staff or an outside consultant. And typically we find that something like a net metered arrangement for solar PV, effectively it's connected into your panel, but goes back out through the meter. The meter registers how much energy comes in and out, and your effectively your hydro bill is credited the value of any energy you have pushed out to the grid, and it's automatic. So low maintenance, moderate return, but it does offset your operating costs for the facility.
Well, in my view today, when you're building something like this and you don't put the solar on it, all you're doing is you're wasting money. Yes.
I just wanted to speak to that. I attended a seminar, online seminar, and there was a municipality outside of London that built a fire hall, and it was net zero. And they used solar panels, et cetera, on the roof. The increase in cost was 15%, and they received a grant for the increased cost of making it a net zero building.
So then they get the income from,
Yeah,
they save the money.
There's an initial cost, but long-term, you're saving money.
Yeah.
And since the municipality is probably going to be here, like for an average citizen to do it on their house, the recovery may not be quick enough, but for a municipality, it doesn't matter how long it takes as long as the cost is recovered.
Well, it hasn't taken us that long.
Yeah.
To get ours back. Anyway, I think it's something that we should be looking into before we finalize this.
Yep.
Yes.
And just one more thing, if I may, through you, Madam Mayor. For the next presentation, when you come back, if you could also let us know what the delay in construction of this building is. How does or will that impact the next things in our pipeline of facilities? Because I think, and I might be wrong on this, but I think we have Galway in 2023, and I think we have Buckhorn in 2024. So I just want to understand, is there any impact? Is this going to push those out, or are we still able to stay on the timeline that was established in our facilities plan? So again, please don't answer it now, but certainly we need to know when you bring back the next report.
Mayor Clarkson, if I may answer that, or at least speak to it. It's Chelsea.
Yes, please.
So through you, I don't see this project schedule delaying any future projects, because those will have to be separate construction tender documents that go out for bid. So I don't think that this project will have any effect on the other projects that are planned for the future. And you are right that the next building is the Buckhorn Depot and Fire Hall that will be going out.
We do have to consider staff capacity, resources, demands. So I don't think it's quite that simple, Chelsea. Understand what you're saying, but maybe a more fulsome answer when we come back at the next report, please.
Just one comment.
Sure.
When we're looking at the timeline, more than likely this building wouldn't be completed until 2024.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean that the other ones can't be in the works.
Probably not, but
Depends
we
on the
need staff
budget.
supervision and committees and working
No,
groups.
but I mean, they
so-
have to be the like everything that's being done now has to be done to the other ones, and that doesn't take any additional staff particularly. It's
Well, I think-
engineers and all those people.
I think Evan would tell us that he spent a whole lot of time working with the consultant on this. And
Well,
would
I'm
have
not
to do
talking
so
about
in
it.
other buildings. So anyway, it's a question that I think we need to understand a little
Going
bit
forward,
better.
I agree. Okay, has everybody got their questions answered? If you've got any more, now is the time.
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, it's Barb. I just wanted to speak to mezzanines. I want to confirm a couple things that both Tyler and Councillor Lambs had said, is that mezzanine is really kind of free space in these types of buildings because you have walls below. So it's very common in these types of buildings to take advantage of that space up there as storage or whatever it's going to be used for. Mezzanines are a little bit of a different kind of an animal in the code because they, depending on the size of them and if they're open mezzanines or closed mezzanines, that determines if it's a story, as Tyler alluded to, and there are, safety measures that have to be taken into consideration when it's a closed mezzanine because it's essentially a room up there. But to answer your question about access to it, it would never need an elevator or anything like that. It just has to comply with code as far as stair size, dimensions, and proper guards.
Looks like the one at the fire hall. Thank you. All right, anybody else online that wants to comment or council? All right, thank you for that. Can we have a motion to accept this presentation, please? Councillor Lambshead and Deputy Mayor Winoler, all in favor? Motion has carried. Thank you, folks. Now we're going to have, okay, does anybody want a break or?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Sure. Okay, now we have a delegation from Karen Shear and Margaret Winkleman from the Buckhorn District Tourist Association regarding donation of bike repair stations and bike racks. I think we heard about these yesterday. Please unmute the audio and share your camera. Make your presentation. You will have 10 minutes, please.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay?
You sure can.
Okay, perfect. Margaret had a meeting, so she's hoping to be able to join us. So I'll just go ahead with the presentation, and hopefully she'll be able to join us shortly. So I'll introduce to you this joint venture is between the Buckhorn District Tourist Association and Citizens for Alternative Transportation in Trent Lakes. Next slide, please. So the Buckhorn District Tourist Association recognizes that cycling tourism is an opportunity for businesses in Trent Lakes. And at the same time, Cattle is noting that climate change is motivating local citizens in Trent Lakes to use active transportation such as cycling. However, there's a problem with limited cycling infrastructure in Trent Lakes, which may pose a barrier to capitalizing on these opportunities. Next slide, please. So the Buckhorn District Tourist Association and Cattle worked collaboratively and have been successful in obtaining funding for bicycle equipment, namely repair station and lock posts, and installation for Trent Lakes communities for completion by December 31st, 2022. So quite a tight timeline. So we're offering the equipment to be installed on properties owned by the Municipality of Trent Lakes, if that is acceptable to the Municipality of Trent Lakes. Next slide, please. So our funding covers the total cost of equipment, and I put plus or minus installation just because when I was talking with Dylan Kosh, I wasn't sure if there were certain contracts or obligations in place where the equipment needed to be installed by the municipality rather than by the company who sells the equipment. So either way is fine. It will just affect the total number of units, whether or not we need to cover the installation because we have a finite amount of funding involved. So for this funding to work, we would provide the funding, and we would require the Trent Lakes Municipality to obviously give permission for the installation, and if necessary, do the installations. We're in a position where we also would need the municipality to take over the duty of care liability and the maintenance of the equipment. Next slide, please. So this is a little graphic just showing that it's the Buckhorn District Tourist Association who is the recipient of the funding grant. So they would administrate the funds. Cattle combined with the Buckhorn District Tourist Association will be responsible for purchasing the equipment and help as needed with any installations. And Cattle has prepared some suggested locations and suggested equipment sites that would be approved by the municipality, and we would have discussions with people who are working at those sites just to make sure that it would be appropriate equipment and sites. Trent Lakes would need to grant permission, accept the assets as a future donation. except duty of care and maintenance on the equipment. Next slide. The equipment that we have looked at are post and ring racks, and this gives the model number. They have a very small footprint for the installation, and each ring and post rack holds 2 bicycles. They're available either as a surface mount or an in-ground mount. In site visits that we've done, pretty much all of the sites, I think, need to be an in-ground embedded mount for the posts. Next slide, please. And then equipment repair stations. These have a pump you can see on the left side of the screen to pump up bicycle tires. They have tools that are on thick chains, and they have on the right side of the slide, they have a gizmo that lets you put your bicycle up and then lift it off of the ground so that you can work on it. These need to be installed onto a concrete pad, so we would need to pour a pad and then bolt it on. And I've included in the appendix the specifics of what's required for the installation of the different equipment. Next slide, please. So we've looked at some proposed sites, and some of these sites, I'm thinking specifically of Chase Memorial Park, has multiple stakeholders, so I need some direction if we're moving forward on who to speak with about that. And I think I already have contact with Beth, who is of Parks Canada, to do that. So we've looked at, based on our budget loosely, 2 racks at the Buckhorn Welcome Center, 2 racks at Chase Memorial Park, 2 at the Lakehurst Community Center, 2 at the Public Library in Trent Lakes, 2 at the Cavendish Community Center, potentially with a repair station there as well, 2 racks at Galway Community Center, and 4 racks at Sheer Park. So a total of 16 racks and 1 repair station. Final numbers depend a little bit on the installation costs and how we can delegate our budget to go with that. But those were the suggestions that we had come up with. Next slide, please. In terms of maintenance, this is what's listed as the suggested maintenance for the equipment. So bicycle racks, periodic cleaning, if the bolts are damaged in the concrete, or if there's damage to the post unit, and then repair stations, damage to the chains that hold the tools, or repair or replace worn or damaged tools. Details of the funding. So our grant, at this time, we are unable to disclose the funder of the grant. However, that should be coming shortly. We've signed a non-disclosure agreement with them and ask for people to be respectful of that if they do know where the funding is coming from. Next slide, please. In that agreement, it states that all and any announcements or communications, print media, ceremonies, etc., regarding the project need to be coordinated through the Tourist Association and approved by the donor, the funding corporation. And that includes any promotional material or signage. Next slide, please. The equipment, initially, we had planned to donate the racks and equipment immediately to the municipality. However, the funding agreement prevents us from doing that for a period of up to 2 years after the end project date, which is no later than December the 31st. So it's a little bit awkward in that respect compared to what we had initially planned on making the donation. So we're hoping that that will be okay. Next slide, please. And of course, they have in the funding agreement that the funder is free of any liability or claims. And I've had in a few times just to mention the projects do need to be fully completed by December 31st of this year. So if the municipality is necessarily doing the installations, then we do need to have an agreement that they do need to be completed by the end of this year. Next slide, please. And that is my pitch.
I hope you're a biker. Okay, can we have some questions, please?
I
Yes.
just have a comment. I think it's an absolutely great idea. I think really the times that we're living in now and the situation to get people out biking and that and possibly going different locations in the municipality, I think it's a great idea.
I wish we had wider shoulders. Anybody else?
I concur with what Peter said. I mean, this is just a start, I think. I mean, you can't drive in and out to Beaver Lake Road without meeting 2 or 3 bikes going each direction. So, I mean, they're coming out and you're going by the Cavendish Community Center. So why not have a repair rack there and somewhere to put your bike? So I think it's a great start and I think we should continue.
Sure.
Yeah. Carol?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Agree. Kudos to you, Karen, for pushing this and staying persistent and getting all the support that you have. I'd like to hear Dylan comment on this. And in particular, I'd like him to comment on 2 things. One is the bike repair station. Would it be the same model as what we're putting in Odenang Park? Because I think if we start to do this, it should look the same for branding purposes. And the second one, I think it's to Dylan as well, is I don't understand how the funding corporation can own the assets but not have any liability. To me, whoever owns the assets would have to have the liability. So I'm a little confused about that.
The second question, sorry, Dylan, the second question I can answer. So they would, the Buckhorn District Tourist Association is the recipient of the funding. So they own the assets, not the funding corporation. What we're hoping to do is transfer that duty of care to the municipality. And that I don't know how that works.
And you wanted your other
yes,
question?
if Dylan is on the line. Dylan, I believe you and Karen have been in conversations. You've also been in conversations with EDAC, who are placing the bike repair station at Odenang Park. So really interested in your comments because it's your department that will be picking up the responsibility for maintaining these and perhaps installing them, depending on how that shakes out.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Carol, for the question. This is not the same unit, so this unit is different than the one that has been purchased for Buckhorn, which we already have in hand. So if council wishes them all to look the same, perhaps Karen and I can touch base and look at shifting that to the same unit that we have, which I don't know how that will affect our funding pricing wise. Also, I do, I guess, have some reservations with a organization not being the owner of the asset, not being Trent Lakes, and we are again paying for it, kind of like you alluded to there, Carol. If the units were being donated per se, I would think that the municipality would become the owner of the asset and then take over the maintenance, similar to how our memorial donation policy works, where an individual can purchase a bench through the municipality, and we may install a plaque to commemorate the donation and the memorial, but the municipality is the owner of the asset.
And I
Could
think
there
you,
be,
you have a caveat that for 2 years can't happen, don't you?
we do have it in 2 years. We can apply for it to be sooner if that makes a difference. And the sooner, I'm told, would be 1 year, if that makes a difference.
Well, none of us can answer a legal problem, and this is a legal question. So again, I think we have to wait till Donna comes back and then get her to look into.
Or through Madam Mayor, perhaps in her absence, we could have Dylan or somebody else pick that up and get a legal opinion so that we can keep working this, because that December 2022 deadline really means like end of October or mid-November because of weather. So
Because the cement's going to have to be poured in some areas.
yeah. So we have a tight deadline.
Did you
And if we could
consider
move this forward.
Sorry, did you consider putting this at the Tourist Information Center when so many people go through there, or at Flynn's Corners? Flynn's Corners would be ideal, but can it go on property?
The Tourist Information Center is the Welcome Center, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so we did plan for 2 racks there. Flynn's Corners is an issue because if it's at a business, you only get 50% funding. So Flynn's would have to pay 50% of the cost of it.
That's too bad.
Maybe Rockbridge.
Pardon?
Maybe Rockbridge, Stonebridge. Stonescape.
Stonescape. Don't think he'd
Or
take
I don't know if the another site might be the municipal property across from the winery.
Like, I guess to me, like that repair center is going to be an expensive piece of work. I would hate to see that where there wasn't public around to sort of keep an eye on it.
Well, the place that we proposed was the Cavendish Community Center because they do have the police. It's well lit and they do have the police building there.
What do you think of that, Jerry?
I think it's a perfect spot for it.
Sure.
There's lots of people there all the time, and it's not.
And it's visible from the road too, like when you're driving by the road, it's not secluded in there.
No, that's a good spot. Yes.
Just curious about the location at the Cavendish Community Center. Would it be by the library or by the skating rink, or do you have any location?
Yeah, well, I've attached an appendix with some different suggestions. I think what I would do is speak with Kathy Warren, sorry, to see what her thoughts are on placement, because she sees all of the activities there and will know what uses are there. But there's lots of wide open places there where you could put it. And I've taken some pictures of by the library, at the front of the building, by the police station, over by the little pavilion there. There's lots of opportunities, but I wouldn't want to. Sometimes you go and it's not busy there, and then someone says, "Oh, I wish they didn't put this. It's right in the way of this activity that we do all the time here." And so I think then if we're going to move forward on this, the next step would be contacting the people who live and work around those properties so that they can decide the best site for it. And also the racks come in like 14 different colors, so they can pick whatever color they would like with it too.
put it close to the fire hall and get the red one. 'Cause
Yeah.
they're all- How long do the fire hall are in and out of there all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Through Madam Mayor, two things. First, I would try and make them consistent again throughout the municipality, so we have some branding and consistency, and they're recognized as a Trent Lakes thing, same as the repair station. Secondly, I would make a motion to accept the report and to support the proposal in principle pending another report back by Dylan with some of those particulars around legal and installation, et cetera.
Okay. Can we have a second? You want to make a motion for that, right?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, you can second it. Any more conversation? All in favor? Okay, happy biking.
Thank you, Mayor Clarkson and councillors.
Okay, staff reports, I don't see any. Recreation, no. Fire, no. Building and planning. Sarah, are you on there?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. So the item on the agenda today relates to the ZBA application for Howe. The last planning report from the external planning consultant, Chris Jones, is attached to today's agenda, which is what you're looking at right now. The application was deferred on the May 3rd council meeting pending a more detailed report from the agent, and it was deferred again at the June 21st council meeting pending further correspondence between staff and the agent. The report attached is the one associated with the June 21st meeting. There's a zoning bylaw amendment attached to today's agenda that illustrates several changes to the proposal that both staff and the applicants agree with. These changes to the original recommendations include: one, that the continued existence of the cabana structure is permitted; two, a decrease to the total ground floor area of the proposed boathouse; and three, an increased distance from the interior side yard to the proposed boathouse. Staff are recommending that council supports the attached bylaw on today's agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Councillor Armstrong?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad that staff and the applicant were able to work through a consensus on this one. So I would make a motion to approve as recommended by staff.
And a second. That would be Councillor Branson. All in favor? Thank you. Yes, Sarah, the second one for the hold on Fortescue.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. This file pertains to the removal of the hold for the file application under the name Pond. There's a planning report in today's agenda pertaining to part of lots 6 and 7, concession 18, from the municipality's external planning consultant, Chris Jones. Chris's report indicates that council passed a zoning bylaw amendment known as B 2022-005 for the subject lands to authorize a waterfront building location for a large parcel on Fortescue Lake. These lands were rezoned in part from rural to shoreline residential private access exception 103 holding zone. The holding provision required the applicant to enter into a site plan agreement as a condition of removing the hold. Chris's report notes that the requisite site plan agreement for the part of the land zoned SRPA exception 103 hold has been prepared, reviewed, and executed by the owner in accordance with the recent amendments to the Planning Act. So the chief building official is prepared to sign the agreement on behalf of the municipality. It is recommended that council receives the report from the external planning consultant and approves the attached bylaw to remove the hold provision that was established by bylaw B 2022-005.
Okay, do we have a motion for this one? Okay.
I would make a motion to receive the report and to approve the attached bylaw. I think we do actually approve the bylaw later.
Okay, Councillor Lamshead and seconded.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Thank you. Now I'm going to disappear for this one.
Okay.
And
10-4-3. Chris Jones, planning consultant. application for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. Rockridge. So you want to bring? She says here.
Do we have someone that wants to speak
Sarah,
to
what's
this?
his name?
Hello, Chris is here.
Oh,
There we go.
Chris, yeah, okay. Hi, Chris.
Yeah, so Mr. Deputy Mayor and Council, this is the application for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for the Rockridge Quarry proposal. And so this is a follow-up to my planning report that I provided and presented to Council. It was dated April 8th, and I think we met on April 12th. The resolution that came out of that report, and again, it was that planning report, as you recall, was intended to be sort of a final planning report that considered all technical matters, reviewed and reconciled provincial policy and county and local official plan policy, and as well as summarized and reviewed and assessed various public comments that had been submitted in conjunction with those applications. That report concluded that I was in a position to recommend or conclude that the applications were consistent with provincial policy, conformity with county and local official plans. And so the resolution 2022-243 that came out of that primarily provided direction to me to prepare the amending documents, the actual official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. And then there were some other technical details that came out of that I had sort of summarized and articulated in my report. One of which surrounding the use of the primary access route, extraction into Area 3, and provisions relating to a secondary entrance. And then supplemental to that were some sort of edits, some suggested edits and notations to the actual ARA site plans themselves. So if we just go to page 2 of my report, appended to this planning report, Council would have seen the draft official plan amendment, the draft zoning bylaw amendment, and then in Appendix 3 was a document titled Agreed Changes to the Aggregate Resources Act site plans. And so that gives Council not only the amending documents, but an indication of the areas of the site plans that were edited or modified in conjunction with collaborations and discussions with the applicant. In terms of where we've come from and where we're at today, these 4 bullets essentially sort of represent sort of the action items that came out of my previous planning report. The first bullet, the first item relates to the use of the primary haul route, which would essentially be located on abutting lands to the south. And in my previous planning report and discussion with Council, I may have characterized that haul route, that internal haul route, as a shared haul route. And in fact, it's intended as a dedicated haul route to the proposed Rockridge facility. So my previous recommendation that a holding provision be attached to the mineral aggregate zone, requiring that what again I had characterized as a shared access to be put in place, that really wasn't warranted, given that the intent is for that County Road 36 to be a dedicated internal haul route for the use exclusively of Rockridge. And so on that basis, the license for Rockridge, the proposed lands that are subject to these amendments, that license wouldn't be able to proceed without an accompanying amendment to the Stonescape license, essentially authorizing that shared entrance. So you will see in the agreed upon changes to the ARA site plans, there's just been some additional language just to clarify the nature of a lease agreement to be utilized between these abutting lands. And then also the need, obviously, for the ARA site plan amendment to the Stonescape site to allow and accommodate that access. So that's the first point. The second point had to do with the potential use of a holding provision on what was referred to as Area 3 of the Stonescape Quarry. And Area 3 was subject to a special hydrogeological condition, which essentially required additional study prior to extraction into that area. And that was an item that, again, I discussed at some length with staff, our solicitor, the ministry, as well as the proponent. And what we ended up agreeing on with respect to Area 3 was that we would add some additional language surrounding that special hydrogeological condition that would essentially make it a little clearer that the ministry had a particular role in the review of that supplemental technical work. Secondly, that the municipality, Trent Lakes, would be circulated on that technical work when it's provided, as well as any ministry comments or recommendations. And lastly, in the event that that technical work required or precipitated a change to the ARA site plan, then essentially the language or direction is that amendment would be initiated in a timely manner by the licensee. So that, in a nutshell, was an alternate mechanism that was agreed upon by the parties as a way to ensure that extraction within the licensed area of Area 3 is reviewed and the municipality is aware of it. And in the event that changes are required, that the direction to the licensee is to proceed with those amendments in a timely fashion. The third item had to do with it was a bit of a detail surrounding the blasting report, and it had to do with the Flynn's gas station and residents. And it was actually a comment that was raised by the owner, I believe, of the gas station, just with respect to the residents not being identified as a sensitive receptor. In the end, and it took a little bit of work on the part of the proponent and ourselves to get into the county database and essentially recognize or realize that 29 and 39 County Road 507 are separate 911 signs or street numbers that are assigned. Hello? Yeah. Sorry, is there a question? No. Okay, sorry. So 29 and 39 County Road 507 are separate street numbers that are assigned essentially to the house and the gas station on the same property, which the blasting report had actually identified. It was just, I interpreted it as being separate parcels of land. So in the end, that issue resolved itself. And the last item had to do with the proposed secondary entrance to the 507. And so the applicant, upon further consideration, and I think sort of confirmation that of their full intention to utilize access directly to 36, what they've done is remove that proposed access route, that secondary access route, and so what that leaves then is as council is aware, there is an existing sort of private road / cow path that meanders from 507 back to the sort of back 40 of these lands and into the licensed area. So you'll see in the language of the amending the zoning bylaw amendment, because that access and the initial part of that private road are located outside of the licensed area, it is incumbent on the municipality through our zoning bylaw to recognize that as an existing access. And so a holding provision has been applied essentially on all lands external to that license. And what that essentially provides is, again, a bit of a check and balance. In the event, for whatever reasons, at some point in the future, there is a need or a request to create an entrance directly from 507, that there would be, number one, a holding provision preventing that. But secondly, technical conditions or requirements to be addressed if that is, again, a consideration or a objective of this licensee or any future licensee or owner. And that, Mr. Deputy Mayor and Council, that pretty much sums up the sort of collaboration and range of discussion. It took us a while to get there, and apologize for that. It continues to be really, really busy. But I think what you have in front of you at this juncture is our amending documents that that the proponent has been involved in and we have collaborated on. And again, together with staff, your solicitor and the ministry, I think I've done what I can to try to ensure that sort of I'm listening to all parties and trying to provide you with good advice. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor and Council. If there's any questions, then by all means, let me know.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Just a comment, the holding provision prevents any development of the area outside of the quarry area?
Yeah, so what we could do, can we just scroll forward into Appendix 2? Because let's find the schedule to the zoning. Yeah, keep going. Okay, well, yeah, keep going, sorry. Yeah, let's go to the map. Okay, so what you're looking at is the schedule to the zoning bylaw amendment, and then everything in that crosshatch is a revised RU-12 zone, rural 12. And I'm remiss because, as I said in my earlier planning report, there was obviously a prior day or history to this site where the entire site was zoned RU-12 and essentially permitted some sort of camp and restaurant and uses related to a camping facility. And so those uses have been removed and essentially a new or replacement RU-12 zone has been created. And one thing that RU-12 zone does is it recognizes the existing 3 buildings that are there, 2 dwellings and a building that's authorized to be used for office or administration related to the quarry facility. So that's one change that I think helps clarify going forward for the owner and the municipality how those existing buildings can be utilized. But the holding provision, yes, applies to everything in that crosshatch area. And primarily what that's enabling or restricting, however you want to look at it, is that in the event the applicant wishes to use that existing private road or formalize it or reconstruct it in a way that would allow it to be utilized as a haul route, that's the holding provision would essentially be again, a sort of a check in the system that before you get to that point, that there will obviously be a need for a county entrance permit. But again, because that's an existing private road that has not historically been used for haul route traffic, that there would be a reassessment or consideration of things like noise, natural heritage, and that type of thing.
Thank you. That does answer my question.
So, go ahead, Terry.
No, that answers my question. Thank you.
Carol, are you? Questions?
I have no questions. I would go ahead and make the motion to receive the report and to approve the recommendation for the zoning bylaw amendment.
Motion, Can we,
Again,
you're seconding it?
Yeah.
Gary? Okay, well, we could have maybe a recorded vote on this. Okay,
Are you ready for the vote?
I'd like to just make a comment.
well, yes,
I have some environmental concerns about this. I have concerns about climate change. I have concerns about CO2s going into the air. Opening up more and more quarries is going to contribute to climate change, and we're supposed to be reducing our CO2s by 50% by 2030, and I don't know how we're going to manage to do this if we open quarries that may not even be necessary.
You ready
so
for the vote?
that's your comment?
That's my comment.
Okay, good. So we're looking for the vote?
Okay. Deputy Mayor Windover, are you in favor?
Yes?
Councillor Armstrong?
yes.
Councillor Franzen?
Abstain.
Councillor Lamb
Yes.
That has carried.
Okay. Okay, good. All in favor then? Carrie. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks very much, folks. Have a good day.
Well, it wasn't all in favor. I abstained.
If this one is over there, you're opening it up for it.
You're expanding it.
No, just the walk ups, just to get it out of there. They're expanding the board, so.
Okay, thank you. Our next report is Chastity Robertson, Deputy Treasurer. Welcome back, Chastity.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, this report is for Council's information regarding the municipality's insurance renewal for 2022 to 2023.
Okay, can we have a motion to accept this report, please? Deputy Mayor Windover. Councillor Lambshead, and conversation. Anybody want to comment on this at all? All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, administration. Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works, Supervisor of Waste and Public Works Coordinator.
Thank you very much, Mayor Clarkson. Through you, Mayor, to members of council, before you today is 4 recommendations, which in turn will create or approve Chelsea Carpenter as a Supervisor of Waste Operation, Public Works Coordinator, and this would be effective next Monday, and this would be effective moving forward. Also changing her work week from 35 to 40 hours. Once again, just in my short time here at the Municipality of Trent Lakes, Chelsea Carpenter is probably one of your greatest assets as a municipal employee. She completes tasks very proficiently and always is there to go above and beyond just to get the job done. And she is very motivated, and she's very passionate about waste and waste diversion projects. So I think having her in this position will be a benefit to the municipality and the taxpayers.
I concur. Can we have a motion to accept this promotion? Councillor Franzen and Councillor Lambshead. All in favor, and congratulations.
Yep.
Corporate Services, Ann Ruth. Council Conference and Expense Claims Policy Review.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Clarkson. This report responds to direction from Council for staff to review the Council Conferences and Expense Claims Policy and report back, and specifically addresses the 2 sections of the policy where matters of non-compliance were identified in regard to April 2022 expense claims for some members. The current requirement to present a full original receipt supports accountability and transparency, provides important information to council in their consideration of approval of expense claims, and allows staff preparing reports to assess compliance with the policy. It's recommended that this requirement remain in the policy. In regard to the daily established limits for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it is recognized that individuals have unique food intake requirements and eating styles, and staff are recommending replacing the traditional breakdown by meal with a daily maximum reimbursement of $100 for the cost of meals. For consistency and fairness, should council wish to proceed with changes to the policy, it's recommended that the revised policy be effective for the new term of council commencing on November 15th. And further, that staff be directed to review the employee expense claims policy, which includes similar provisions for reimbursement of the cost of meals, and report back with proposed revisions to align the two policies. Thank you.
Okay, can we have a motion and then we'll have a discussion if anybody wants to.
I'd like to make a comment before we make a motion on it. I have no problem with this proposal, but I'm just wondering, why couldn't we just give councillors $100 when they go on a conference per day and not have to have receipts, and it would be a lot less work for staff?
Comment?
Yeah, I think that there's a difficulty there, which our municipal taxpayers don't want to be buying a keg of beer or something with their $100. I think it's meant for food and not alcoholic drinks, so you could do whatever you want with $100.
Yeah.
Councillor Armstrong.
And if I could add to that, it's $100 maximum, and very often at conferences, meals are already provided. So somebody may be getting their breakfast and lunch at the conference venue and then going out for dinner. So I think in order to reimburse actual expenses, that probably makes sense. I think there was a proposal, I'm not sure if you were in council at the time, to actually shift our entire expense policy to, a certain amount of dollars that everybody got. So that's a much larger change that would need some further discussion. But for this purpose specifically, I think having to reimburse actual expenses makes sense, and it's accountable. First good thought.
I would make that motion, but I just tried to make it simpler.
Yeah.
It's simpler for people because you don't have to keep your receipt. It's simpler for staff because it's easier to process.
Besides, you've got to be careful what's considered to be a receipt, because I thought I had receipts. That gets a little bit.
Yeah.
I would second. Did you make the motion?
Yeah, I made
Sorry.
that motion.
Then I would second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Motion is carried. Okay. You two okay?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
But no, it's just the same thing in the motion anyway. Yeah.
Could I ask a question? I know it's after the vote, but does this also change the employee for the employees?
It will be brought forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Jesse Clark, you're going to do the Integrity Commissioner Services.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. Section 223.3 of the Municipal Act authorizes the municipality to appoint an integrity commissioner who reports to council and is responsible for performing in an independent manner the functions assigned by the municipality, which are related to the Code of Conduct and the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. The contract for the municipality's current integrity commissioner, Robert Swayze, is set to expire on December 31st, 2022. In anticipation of this and to align with the upcoming municipal election, staff prepared and issued an RFP for integrity commissioner services. Upon award of the contract and until January 1st, 2023, the end of the current integrity commissioner's contract, Robert Swayze will continue to remain appointed and handle any new or ongoing complaints. During this time, the newly appointed integrity commissioner will review and update the municipality's code of conduct and provide training as part of the orientation for the newly elected council. An RFP was issued and closed on June 15th, 2022. 2 bids were received in accordance with the provisions of the RFP and were reviewed by an evaluation committee composed of the CAO treasurer, director of corporate services clerk, and deputy clerk. It is staff's recommendation that RFP 06-2022 be awarded to the highest scoring firm, being Cunningham, Swan, Carty, Little, and Bonham LLP, and a bylaw to appoint Tony Fleming of this firm as the integrity commissioner for Trent Lakes is included on today's agenda.
Okay, so can we have a motion and then discussion? Councillor Franzen
Motion.
Sure.
and Deputy Mayor Windover, any conversation?
Just a comment. I believe this is the same integrity commissioner that the county just appointed as well, and I think there's a benefit in that. So that's just another reason to support this.
Okay, all in favor? Motion is carried. Correspondence for information. Anybody want to pull any of these out? Correspondence for action. Oh, sorry.
I need a motion to receive all correspondence.
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion, Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Armstrong, all in favor. Motion is carried. Correspondence for action, Central Eastern Snowmobile Region Association advertising request. Is this one we normally do?
Mayor Clarkson, yes. Last year we provided, or we authorized an advertisement in the amount of $300 plus HST. And there is $3,000 budgeted annually for these requests, and to date, only $677.69 have been used.
So have we got a motion? Yes.
A motion to approve the $300 business card side.
Okay, that's Councillor Lambshead and seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? Motion is carried. Community School Alliance, do we have a motion to support or yes?
To receive.
To receive, Councillor Franzen and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Windover. All in favor? Motion is carried. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers advertising request. Jesse.
I'll anticipate the question. And last year we authorized a $399 advertisement plus HST.
Okay.
I
Council.
would certainly make a motion to support that.
Okay, Councillor Lambshead and seconded by Deputy Mayor Windover. All in favor? Motion is carried. Municipality of Tweed, Ontario Wildlife Damage Compensation Program. Boy, that could get handy, couldn't it? Motion.
Motion to receive.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor. Motion is carried. Annual Emergency Exercise Exemption, Hay Valley Township. Councillor Lambshead?
I think I would make a motion to support this because if you've had an emergency in your municipality, you probably don't need to do a mock-up exercise. You know, most municipalities don't have emergencies, but if you do, then
you've been there.
You've done it. You know what the problems were, and you can solve them. I to support this.
Okay, anybody second that? Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor? Motion is carried. We did not vote that one. All right, did I get enough?
But the emergencies could be different, eh?
Yeah. So are you not?
No, I support it, but
Okay.
I'm saying you could have a different emergency.
Okay.
And you may
So-
not do a debriefing if it's a real emergency. You may just move on.
Lucky we survived.
Yes, relief.
Okay, bylaws. Jesse, you're going to speak to this, but we don't have a motion that we need to make. You're just going to talk about it.
Right, through you, Mayor Clarkson. There are two bylaws on today's agenda that didn't have an associated public meeting or staff report. The first is B 2022-79, which is a zoning bylaw amendment for file 2207. Public meeting was held June 7th and supported by council. And B 2022-85 is a bylaw to authorize the signing of a contribution agreement for funding for an accessible playground in Odenang Park.
Okay. So now we need to zoning bylaw amendment for 2206 for Howell. Motion, please.
Approved.
Approved. Okay. Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Lambshead, all in favor. Motion is carried. And for the appointment of the integrity officer, Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Franzen, all in favor. Motion is carried. And the bylaw amendment file for 22-07 for Saunders. Motion, please. Okay. Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Armstrong, all in favor. Motion is carried. Removal of a holding provision for file number 2222 Pond. Motion, please. Councillor Franzen and Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor. Motion is carried.
Which it was.
And Ron, I'm going to get you to do that one.
So we're going to official plan, are we? B. Oh,
I'm not here.
here.
I'm not here. Go away.
So B 2022-084 zoning bylaw amendment, Rockridge.
Through you, Mayor, or Deputy Mayor Windover, the first one is 083, and it's for the official plan
Oh,
amendment.
sorry, 083, okay. Okay, 083, amendment number 50, Rockridge.
Motion to approve and a recorded vote, please.
Yes.
I'll
So,
second the motion.
yeah, okay. All in favor? Do we have to record a vote on this one? No?
Yep, Councillor Armstrong, are you in favor?
Yes.
Councillor Franzen?
Abstain.
Councillor Lambshead?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
Yes.
That motion's carried.
Okay, so then, 2022-084, zoning bylaw. That's Terry.
Motion to approve.
Motion to
As
approve.
recommended.
Carol.
Second
yes,
with
okay.
a
Second.
recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote, yep.
Councillor Armstrong, are you in favor?
Yes.
Councillor Franzen?
Abstain.
Councillor Lambshead?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
Yes.
That motion's carried.
Okay. 2022-085 to authorize execution of a contribution agreement for Odenang Park Playground. Motion, please. Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Franzen, all in favor. Motion is carried. Business arising out of a previous meeting. Yes.
Just one comment about this weekend on Saturday is the Cavendish Community Center's Carnival Day. So it's a ball tournament, it's face painting, balloons, a huge yard sale that helps finance some of the community center's programs. So anybody who's willing to attend or would like to attend, it's on Saturdays.
So if I go up, I could get my face paint?
I'm sure you can.
Ron, do you remember the days that you and I went and we,
Oh, yes.
and people paid to throw pies at us?
That's exactly right. Yes, I remember very well.
I remember Deputy Mayor
Paid quite a lot
was
to
over
do
in a
it,
dunk tank once too.
Oh, all the memories we share. What time is that?
It's all day Saturday, and then it starts 10-ish.
Okay.
Ball tournament starts at 9.
Okay, I'll get up there sometime. Business arising out of a previous meeting. We did that, I think. I have a notice of motion, so I remove myself from the chair. I'm removed. Now I'm going to state my notice of motion since I'm removed. Whereas conversations with several people in the community have brought to my attention that people are struggling with lack of necessary food, etc. Now therefore, the council support my mayor's budget to be donated to community care. Now, if this happens when this runs out, the Lions are going to keep it up. And this is coming about by people who are going into community care, don't have enough money to do whatever. So it will be given out by them to people that they know are deserving of such. So that's my ask. Yes.
Second the motion.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor?
It's sorry, you're out of the chair. Deputy Mayor Windover's in the chair.
You're in the chair.
Oh.
So you're going to call for the motion.
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote, I guess.
Okay, Peter?
Yep.
Carol? All in favor? Yeah. Approved.
Thank you.
Okay.
Information items, liaison reports from external boards. Do we have any? Yes.
Thank you through Madam Mayor. This maybe should have been earlier. I get those two confused. Anyway, the library is now running in-person programming again. So they have their story time, they have their tween scene, and they do have their take-home crafts. So
Perfect.
back to normal for
Yeah,
at
good.
least a period of time.
As is the, good, thank you.
Oh, yes.
The goodbye room.
Yes.
The goodbye
Goodbye
room.
room.
Yes.
Thank you, Jesse.
Good ad.
Brain freeze, brain freeze.
Good. It's nice to hear that. Makes you
Okay.
feel like we're coming out the other side.
Well, and people, the other one that's doing really well is the used place at the dumps, at the
Oh, the reuse
transfer
centers.
station, to reuse and recycle. Those are doing really well. Business arising from closed meeting, we don't have one. Adoption of the confirming bylaw, we need a motion to confirm. Deputy Mayor Windover, I'm wrong, I put you through your paces today. And Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Motion is carried. Motion to adjourn. Jesse, would you like to motion? Councillor Limeshead, Councillor Franson, Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Armstrong, everybody,
Yes. Go on.
all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.